I'm here to talk to you about cats and the internet. Mostly, that's it. This is me with 12 cats on me, I think. It's the happiest moment of my life. It's at a cat cafe in Japan. I thought that was a good way to start it out. But the way that I came up with the topic for my talk is everybody that I met in New York that knows me knows that I've tried to build this for a really long time. It is a node-powered automated cat feeder that is on that table filled with M&Ms. It's not the same container that I used for the cat food, so there's no cross-contamination there. And so I was like, I really want to build this. I really want to build this, because last time I had an idea for a project, I just kept on putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And then what happened was Mariko did it and did it way better than I could have. So I just figured, you just have to do something. And my friends talked me into applying to this and to Node Interactive, and I was like, I'll build it if I get picked. And then they both picked me, so I kind of had to do it. So trying new things is scary, especially when you have no choice and have to do it. And if it doesn't work, then you're pretty screwed. If it's embarking on a new project or using new technologies for the first time, which I did with this product, I'm front end. I mostly I do everything because I'm the only front end developer for my team. But I've never really done Node app stuff besides here at JSConf and Cassandra Perch's workshop, and I'd never used Socket.io. I'd never done hardware stuff except for blinking an LED. That took me way longer than I'd like to admit. So it was all totally new, and I also never had contributed to open source. So I decided to do all these things that I'd never done all at once and then release it publicly to be scrutinized by people. It's pretty hard to put yourself out there, mostly because a lot of people that I know that contribute to open source have had pretty bad experiences, whether it be just trolling, like random people with the equivalent of the egg on Twitter. Like there's a bunch of new GitHub accounts with no contributions that love to pop up in every code of conduct conversation. There's also when you finally get that project out there, people won't like it. And it's something that it might not be that good, but you can't see it from that point of view when you've been working on it for so long and you're just really tied to it. There's also not thinking you're good enough. So all right, I built this code and it works, but are people going to look at it and be like, why did you use this? Why didn't you do this? This is better. You did horribly. I don't know. There's also a lot of communities. Fortunately, I don't think the JavaScript open source community has this as much as I've seen it happen with other languages. But there's people that are like, if I don't know who you are, why are you even bothering to contribute to this? And they won't even take you seriously. Or just the bad behavior, which is mostly the trolling. The code of conduct arguments are kind of the worst, though. Some of the other bad behavior that I've seen and experienced is the feigned ignorance of, oh, you've never used this method? Everybody knows that. What are you even doing? I also heard about people ignoring contributions. So this is a tricky one, though, because, maintainers are super busy, so you can't pay attention to every pull request that comes in. But if you take the time and submit something and nobody pays attention to it, it can feel pretty bad, which the other side is the demanding user base. Also, people that use pull requests for the sake of a green timeline because it's their measure of self-worth, which is wrong, and people shouldn't think that way. You don't have to constantly be pushing code to prove yourself as a developer. And also just insulting the contributors, which is ridiculous, and disagreeing over trivial things. So I posted on Twitter to try and get people to give me information about their experiences and things that they've had happen. Surprisingly, everyone that responded with bad experiences were women. I don't know if there's a correlation or who knows, but here's some of the things that people said. Jen Schiffer said, vulgar and brutal harassment, expectation, and entitlement of your time without any compensation offered. Another Jen, they're all not named Jen, don't worry. Jen said, unfortunately, the harassment was enough for me to stop trying before I had other problems, so that's where I'm at. She never even got to the point where she was ready to make contributions because of all the bad things that she had seen happening, which is horrible. The next person didn't even want me to name them because they were, scared about people lashing out at her for saying this, or him. Entitlement of time, the assumption you immediately want feedback when you're just starting, nerd pedantics, and obstructing learning. Caroline, who works with Tracy and I at IBM, said, mansplaining mainly, and a general fear that any commit I make will be opened as an issue and debated about. Caroline has a legitimate reason to be afraid of this because she writes a lot about feminism and the game industry and has been a target of Gamergate, and her mother got swatted. So there's legitimate fear that this can come back to you in your real life. Sent a pull request with bug fixes that got ignored for almost a year, after which the maintainer wrote the same fixes and said, oops. And Tessa, mansplaining my own code to me and trolling. Tessa made this really awesome library called EchoChamber.js, which is basically a fake comment form that utilizes local storage. So whenever somebody leaves a comment on a web page, they see it, but they're the only ones that see it. And so people got really mad, really mad. She had an issue open that said, "You're fat and insecure." And then there was a really, really long issue about this person, who I don't think has any commits to anything except maybe Gamergate block list or something like that, that was seriously worried about the psychological effects that this was going to have on the people that couldn't get their voice heard, and the, what was it? It's as a web developer or a site maintainer, you owe something to the people to be able to not mess with them. No, you don't owe anybody shit. It's the internet. Get over it. So all of this was before I'd even started trying to build the project. And then I was like, oh, okay. So now I have to do this. So I guess instead of trying to commit to anything else in open source, I'll just do it myself that way. So my proposal to anybody else that hasn't contributed to open source is, find something you're passionate about. For me, it's cats. And then, or something new that you want to try, which could coincide with the first. Make something cool and open source it yourself, like I did. And then that way, the first point of contact that you have is with your peers. So you're not gonna just post it out there and people find it and are like, this is dumb. LOL. It's going to be people that you care about and trust and are there to give you good feedback. Because constructive criticism from your peers is a billion times better than randos being jerks on the internet. So once I was finally ready, I was like, all right, now here's for some cat pictures again. These are my two cats. This is Reset Smith and Rick Deckard. They're both named after androids. I like cats. Like I said, I'd been talking about building this feeder forever. I had the idea in my head, and I was like, it would be so easy. You just hook up the motor to it and write some code, and it'll work. It'll be great. My only experiences with the NodeBots community had been at JSConf last year in 2014 and here over the summer. And it was great. Everybody's super nice. It was super welcoming and really helpful. So I was like, at least if I mess up, somebody will be there to help me, and it'll be cool. I told you that already. And so yeah, I built RoboKitty. It's a DIY automated cat feeder. There's Reset again. He's the handsome cat, and Rick is the dumb one. But everybody loves Rick because you can literally like do anything you want to him. You pick him up and put him on your lap and he stays, and then he just like flops over, and he's the weirdest cat I'd ever seen in my life. So yeah, for the feeder, I ended up using a few things that were new to me. I used Node. I used Johnny 5, which is a NodeBots robotics framework maintained by Rick Waldron, and there's a ton of contributors that are here too, and it's great. It's really easy. Like the main reason, I say really easy, but I got so mad at this stuff. Like the reason it's great is it has the best documentation for anything that I've ever worked with ever, and I'm that horrible developer that doesn't want to read the documentation and just wants to like jump into it and figure it out, but this is actually helpful because you can go in and you're like, I want to work with this type of module with hardware. I want to use a potentiometer or a servo or an accelerometer, and you go to it and there's code snippets. It tells you exactly how to use it. There's even like wiring diagrams for various microcontrollers, and it's really easy, especially for somebody new like me. Socket.io. So when I decided to use Socket.io, I was just like, I know I have these things that need to talk to each other. That's like something that people use, right? It sounds good. So I just picked it, and it worked. I bought an Arduino Uno, and then I was like, oh wait, there's no internet on an Uno. I would have to like buy a Wi-Fi shield, and I'm not exactly sure what that is, or a breakout board, and I have no idea what that is. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try something else. So I bought an Arduino Uno, and then Rick was like, oh, the Johnny 5 support for that's not good. And I was like, okay. So I bought a particle photon. So the project itself is cheap, but that's when you buy the right parts first and not all the wrong ones. So don't worry, I bought all the wrong ones for you. So the parts that you actually need for the project are a dry goods dispenser, which is the thing that has the M&Ms in it. It's basically, if you've ever been to a continental breakfast, you've dispensed goods. It's like $12 or $16 on Amazon. You need a particle photon kit with a breadboard. If you already have a breadboard and you just need the particle photon, it's like $19 for the photon, and then the kit is $29, I think. If you bought it on Black Friday, there was a sale. You need a continuous servo, which is a servo that is continuous, which means it can keep on turning over and over again. A 4 AA battery pack with an on and off switch. The photon itself doesn't have enough power to run the motor on the servo, so you need to power it externally. And as I'm finding out, that's actually probably not the best solution because the batteries don't last long at all. So if you think this is cool, wait a minute and let me fix it, and then it'll be even better. But for now, 4 AA battery pack, it's $2. It's fine that it's cheap. And then miscellaneous hardware accessories, which are male-to-male jumper wires, a soldering iron, and heat shrink. If you already have those laying around, great, that saves you more money. So yeah, when I first got started, the way that it felt trying to put this together was like this. Just trying to fit things, but things were okay. They went pretty smooth. When I started wiring it together, it went really easy. I started it all off with, I wrote my code so that I had an element on the web, and then I had the controller on my server code, and I just started off with LED blinking, because I was like, okay, if I can push a button and get the LED to blink, then I can just swap out the motor, and it'll be super easy, and then it'll be done. It'll work. It'll be good. But I didn't think about the fact that I had to like do math with electricity stuff, and I was afraid that I was gonna like electrocute myself the whole time. I also didn't realize that I needed to power the servo. I thought it would like magically work by plugging things in because, I don't know, you connect it and it should go. In my head, that was like how it works. I also didn't know how to solder, but I luckily typed into YouTube how to solder, and this really awesome doomsday prepper had a video. And he was like, all you do, he was talking about a lot of other stuff too, but it was really easy, and I was surprised at how easy it was. Yeah. So then I had everything set up with the servo, and I'm ready to test. The code's working great. It's looking good. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The cron job that I have in the code, which is for the scheduler part, you can set it so that it feeds the cats every like 1, 2, 24, I don't know, something divisible by 24, then you can feed the cats on that schedule. It was working good because I tested it with seconds before I set it to hours. The servo was strong enough to power the feeder, which I was like, if it works with a little bit of food, is it gonna work with a lot of food? And it did, so that was good. Except it wouldn't stop. So it would just keep on going, and all of the food that was in it would just come out, and I was like, oh, that's kind of important. I need this to work. And so I freak out. I have this really bad tendency whenever something goes slightly wrong to try everything I can to fix it, which is especially bad when I mess up Git branches. So I freaked out on Twitter. I censored it in case you're offended. This was actually because I had reset the access token to communicate with the Photon, and I forgot to update my code. It took me like 3 hours to realize that, because I wasn't reading the whole error message, and I just knew it wasn't working, so I was mad. So I decided to ask other people to help me. There's a really great Gitter chat for Johnny 5 where there's people there that will help you, and people helped me, but it didn't really help. There's also a Brooklyn JS NodeBots room, which Francis, who helps run only Sarah does Queens.js. He is working at Boku now. He does a lot of NodeBots stuff. He made a room when I was having problems, probably so I would stop asking them on Twitter all the time. People reviewed my code and said nothing was wrong. Suze reviewed my code, and she's like, it looks good. I don't know what's happening. And I was like, so what is happening? Why is it wrong? And then something awesome happens. After Rick told me to stop buying shitty servos, he went, this is Rick Waldron, the guy that made Johnny 5. He went to the store that I bought my shitty servo from, bought the same one, and realized that there was a bug in his library. So I tweeted this, the code for my automated feeder is done. If I didn't already have a cat named Rick, I'd name the next one after Rick Waldron. And he gave me the credit for finding the bug when I didn't, I guess I did. I guess I found it even though I didn't realize it, because I don't know, I still don't know anything about hardware. I just try and plug things in and it worked. So that was really great, because what ended up happening is servos have this thing called a deadband, and sometimes you need to adjust them with a trim pot, which is like a hole in the side that has a screw. If it has a trim pot, mine didn't. I had to take the whole thing apart, and there's one inside, so you turn it until it stops when it's going. And the code in Johnny 5 that you can set a deadband in wasn't implemented into the stop code for the servo. So even if I had everything right, it would have never stopped. It would have kept on going. But it's fixed now, so that's good. I'll show you the code really quick. I made sure I took out my access tokens. So this code, too, is not how it's like on the actual repo anymore. It's just typical. I'll scroll. I'm not going to go through every line. You set up your server. You add all your things. This is the code for Johnny 5 to set up a board. You've got the function that is making your cron string for however you want it to feed it. And then the board's ready. There's a servo. You've got the listener for the board connection and the web connection. And then you've got the feeding event, so it feeds the cat. And that's great. And then there's also an event for the cron job. It's really simple code. And then the client code before I added routing was just a button and a drop down. And now this is what it looks like. So basically what happens is you hit feed me immediately and it dispenses the food, which I'll show you really quick. Can you switch the on button on the... So I have it here. Watch it not work. I will cry. You push the button, and it doesn't work. Okay, well, it would. It's not important. I'll show you later. And then the cats get food, and it's great. So you're almost ready to open source. I put a call on Twitter for people to review my code, and the response was so good. So many people helped, a lot. They refactored it so that it had happy. Jacob, where are you? You're somewhere. Oh, there. He helped fix my code too. It was really cool. I was so happy. So they did all that. Ashley Williams made it into a NPM module, reviewed the README for language, and they liked it. It was great. My cats liked it too. It worked. They ate it. I got a really good GIF. Don't get mad at me for saying GIF. I mean, Rick likes food, so he would have no matter what, but it made for a really good thing. So when I was ready to launch, I changed the repo to public, I tweeted about it, I submitted a link to Hacker News, and then I went to sleep. And then when I woke up, I wasn't quite ready for what happened. I was on the front page of Hacker News. People retweeted it and faved it so much. There's like over 500 stars now on GitHub, which is really cool. And I'm huge in Japan. It was really neat. So basically, the whole entire project helped me realize a lot of things. Don't be afraid of the unfamiliar, because it doesn't matter if you don't know it, because you will when you're done. And definitely don't be afraid to ask for help. I struggled with this for a really long time. Because I didn't want people to assume that I didn't know what I was doing, so I would spend a really long time trying to bug fix or figure out any problems, because I just wanted to do it myself, no matter how long it took. And now I'm lazy, and I don't want to spend a really long time doing stuff, so I'll just ask people to help me out, and it goes a lot quicker. Also, people really like cat stuff, more than me, maybe. Also, don't downplay your abilities. When I was almost done with the project, whenever I would tell people about it, I would be like, it's not that impressive, but, and Dustin, who's right there, would say, stop telling people that it's not that impressive, like, just tell them about it, because it's cool. Also, I like NodeBots a lot. It's really fun. It's relatively easy, even though it's kind of stressful, like when things don't work when you're supposed to demo them. Yeah, it was really fun. I'm going to try and get it to work really quick. Okay. Good, you can't see my terminal. Oh, wait, that's... Okay, it disconnected, I think. That makes sense. Okay, we're up. It's on. Are you sure that the switch is on? Is it breathing? Okay, great. Maybe it'll work now. Okay. Oh, you know what? I wonder... I spent like $20 on 8 bags of M&Ms, so I'm just going to keep on pushing this. Please go eat some candy if you want it, because one more time. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is trying to get this full screen. Okay. Is my history with JSConf. My first JSConf was last summer, so May 2014. I didn't know anybody. Here's a picture of Tom Dale throwing a ball at a dunk tank. And there's me standing in the background by myself, watching, because I didn't know anyone. This was the dunk tank if you weren't there. It was great. I actually dunked everyone besides Tom. And I think that's the only reason that like Chris remembered who I was the next time he saw me, because I'm really good at dunk tanks. So I didn't really know anybody besides the few coworkers that I had, and so I just would drink and go in the pool every night by myself, and that's where I met this guy. He was like, you live in Brooklyn. That's cool. I live in Brooklyn. There's this really great thing called Brooklyn JS. You should totally come. And I did. And the first Brooklyn JS that I went to, I met a lot of people. I became friends with Jen Schiffer, who now you can thank that for horrible moments like this. And She invited me to DHTMLConf, which is a part of JSFest in Oakland, where I got my first speaking opportunity. That was a satirical talk about me being kind of a big deal on the internet, which was basically history of all the bad things that I've done on the internet since I started building websites when I was like 14. And then my first Burrow meetup talk, Jed, close your eyes. Manhattan JS is this really cool thing where it's 3 technical talks and then a passion talk, which is, I'm sorry, I'll go back. And I do special effects makeup as a hobby. It's really fun, and I like fake blood a lot. And so I made Will Duffy look like he had a half of a cut on his face. So I met all these great people, and they really encouraged me to be more comfortable with myself as a developer and not be afraid to do things. So when it came to JSConf this summer, it was vastly different. I wasn't staying to myself. I was in a much better mood. I wasn't afraid to try stuff. I actually got to do things, like I went to the NodeBots thing and I built a robot. It was neat. It was really fun. I also had to put this up there because I don't think I'll ever forget anything about lithium polymer batteries. But the coolest thing that happened over the summer was because of JSConf, I got a job. And I had my first interview in the hot tub, and I know that sounds horrible, but there was like 20 people in the hot tub. It was cool. It was fine. No code of conduct was violated. I just had an interview in the hot tub. And then here I am now talking to all of you, and then on Monday I have to go to Portland and talk about it again, and it's overwhelming, but I don't think that I would have done any of the things that I have done in the past year, or met like half the people that I've met and became friends with if it wasn't for JSConf. So, thank you.